Hi there. How's it going? I hope you're well and doing okay. I'm sure that most of you are kind of familiar with what's going on and what I'm going to be talking about, particularly about the death of the UnitedHealthcare CEO. Now, by the way, just as a backdrop, it's actually 1 a.m. at night right now, and I'm doing this recording in my home office, just away from the kids. So this usually the time that I find to record and also, do this thing, which I kind of enjoy in a way. But as we kind of backtrack and we talk about the death of the United healthcare CEO, I wanted to ask questions around what does it really say about us, right? When some people sort of celebrate the violent death of this man who lost his life just like that, man. But I think it's easy to talk about it, and one of the things that the media is not picking up or talking about that I wanted to share with you and also explore a bit with you as well. It's the comments that people are making on posts or videos or news related to the death of this CEO. And I want to ask the question really, how do feelings of injustice and anger and frustration, how do they kind of shape our collective sense of well-being? And also, what does this even mean for our journey towards human flourishing, given the fact there's a flourishing platform on channel and we talk about all things flourishing, whether ideas or stories, or even provide some kind of scientific insights to help you flourish. But I do, in that context, I want to explore sort of the psychology behind this kind of response, the anger and frustration that we see in the comments of people, and even ask questions around what it really reveals about our human nature, about our societal system, about the healthcare system, if you will, and also our deep desire, or rather the deep desire that we all have for fairness and dignity. So I want to talk about this in this particular episode. So if you're joining us, I hope that you hang in there. It's going to be lots of fun. Okay? All right. So if you're interested in it, it's going to be locked up. Now, a bit of an introduction. I want to kind of recap on what's happened on December 4th. I think Brian Thompson, who was the CEO of UnitedHealthcare, he was tragically shot in New York. He was actually going for a meeting that morning in what authorities believe to be a targeted attack. Of course, in the aftermath of this, there were kind of mixed responses. The face of the man is not clear; it's kind of blurry, but police are still looking for this guy that shot him. But interestingly, was that the responses was kind of mixed, with some kind of expressing sympathy, while others kind of surprisingly kind of responded with positivity, or rather even celebration of the man's death, which is kind of very weird response, especially when you think about the fact that someone just lost their life and kids have lost their father, a wife has lost the husband. But now, of course, as you would imagine, any act of violence, it's kind of tragic and should be condemned. But this particular reaction that we see kind of gives us an important psychological moment to even analyze. As I'm thinking about it more, I'm also kind of thinking about what would have also led to this and why people reacting positively to the death of someone. Now, but also, why would people feel relief or even satisfaction in response to this particular killing? Now, to understand this, I think we need to kind of explore a bit of psychology, or delve into psychology, specifically look at concepts like moral outrage, things like the psychology of perceived just injustice, and what all this means, for human flourishing. I know I've also seen some psychologists touch about this and talk about trauma response as this being an example of that. But honestly, as we think about this, I think there are many ways that we can consider what might be happening. But let's start with talking about a moral outrage, because, of course, it is one way to talk about this. Now, I think that humans, as you know, are sort of wired for fairness. We are wired, we seek for human dignity and the desire. It's sort of a psychological need to kind of feel a sense of belonging, that sense of fairness. Of course, when you feel that you belong to a particular group, you expect some sense of fairness that comes with that. And of course, for most of you that know, especially with self-determination theory, it's a very fundamental motivation theory in psychology as well that we use to kind of assess psychological needs. And so that idea of fairness could be equated to the sense of relatedness, essentially. If we in one accord, I expect to be treated in fairness, but also the desire for justice. As you know, it's sort of embedded in our psychology, especially again if we have that sense of connection, because we all want the psychological need for connection. If we have that sense of connection, you would expect that you'll be treated fairly, but also you would expect that you'll be treated in a just way. And so when we feel that someone or something is causing us harm, we, of course, would experience what we call moral outrage. But moral outrage is also an emotional reaction to sort of perceive the injustice. It's sort of a mix of anger, disgust, or even frustration. In fact, studies show that when people witness unfair systems like the healthcare systems, I'm sure if you've not gone through the problem of the healthcare system, you probably would not understand the frustration of people and why we are having the outrage that they are expressing. But essentially, studies also shows that when people witness unfair systems, whether it's systemic inequality, whether it's corporate greed, whether it's exploitative practices, this sort of outrage can often lead to intense emotional responses, as we've seen after the death of with the death of this CEO. But for many, essentially, the healthcare system sort of represents this kind of injustice, especially when you think about it, with denied claims, with exorbitant cost, with bureaucratic barriers. In fact, these experiences, as you would imagine, can lead people feeling helpless and angry, and may also contribute to the reason why you see the many positive responses to the death of a man. Of course, the CEO of a major healthcare provider then becomes sort of a symbolic target for all these frustrations. But why then do people channel the frustration towards individuals like the CEO that just died rather than the system itself? Because as I think about this, I try to think about why this is the case. Why not channel the frustration to the system, to the healthcare system, and not to a man that just lost his life and leaving his kids without father, or the wife without a husband? And I think this is where the concept of symbolic representation kind of comes in. In psychology, when a problem sort of feels too big or too abstract, people kind of look for a clear target. Of course, like someone or something that sort of symbolizes the entire issue. And this is also known as scapegoating, essentially. And scapegoating sort of allows people to simplify complex issues. It's not usually the solution. And so for most people, instead of fighting a faceless system, they direct their emotions towards someone that they can visualize and blame. And in this case, the CEO, Brian Thompson, kind of represents an entire healthcare system that feels that many feel had failed them. But I think there's also another psychological factor at play here, particularly the impact of systemic inequality on our well-being. Now, I know that research often show that societies with high levels of inequality often report higher levels of stress, anxiety, and distrust. I think this is even a global phenomenon, as you would imagine. Also, thanks to COVID as well, which kind of exacerbated most of these things. And so when people experience healthcare injustice, it taps sort of into a deeper sense of being undervalued. It taps to a deeper sense of being marginalized or even exploited. It kind of impacts the psychological need for relatedness, right? That sense of connection we have with each other. And so these experiences can, of course, erode our sense of dignity, which, of course, is the key to aspect of human flourishing. But in fact, I think flourishing isn't just about personal happiness or success. It's also about feeling that your life has meaning, that you are treated fairly, and that you can trust the systems around you. And when the systems around you does not give you a commensurate fair effect or commensurate justice, if the system around you does not treat you fairly, essentially, of course, that would impact your flourishing, which is where all these things set in. But let's talk about flourishing for a moment, because I think there are psychological consequences of injustice on systemic flourishing. Essentially, of course, as you know, flourishing, as I've often talked about it in this channel, is sort of a state in which all aspect of an individual state, it's good. Now, this, of course, draws on the Aristotelian philosophy and definition, or the idea of eudaimonia. But also, you could also use capability theory or framework to talk about flourishing as a state in which the things that people value, right, it's good, or that it leads to the life that they value. And so, if the things that we value, or the things that we love and cherish, or the things that is meaningful to us, if that leads to the kind of life that we want, then essentially we're flourished. And in this case, that could be health. In fact, flourishing also involves different dimensions like happiness, things like health, things like purpose, things like character, even relationships, particularly the health dimension. If the systems around us does not allow us to have access to healthcare, or that health dimension, it would impact ultimately our sense of flourishing. Now, I do think that when people feel that the systems meant to protect them are exploiting them, these dimensions becomes compromised, as we see with comments that people have been making about this particular case. In fact, some would also say that UnitedHealthcare had the highest rejection rate of any health insurance company in the country. And so when systems that are supposed to support people become exploitative, it does compromise systems of flourishing. For example, happiness would normally decline because of chronic frustration and resentment, which could replace the joy that we normally would have when we are happy. Our health would suffer due to stress, anxiety, and ironically, like lack of a proper health care. Even for people's sense of purpose will become harder to find when life feels like a constant struggle against an unfair system. In fact, in essence, systemic injustice in itself doesn't just harm individuals, it kind of undermines our collective ability to flourish. Now, so how do we move forward from here? I do think that, or rather, how do we kind of foster a society where people don't feel driven to celebrate tragic events out of frustration, as we're seeing today? I think it starts with addressing empathy and injustice, these two issues, because I think that we need systems that ultimately prioritize people's well-being and not just profits. We need transparency, we need fairness, we need policies that sort of recognize healthcare as a fundamental human right. And I think that's very important. And I'm hoping that the next administration, the Trump administration, will do something about this to kind of tighten up the loopholes within the healthcare system. Because I think restoring trust in our systems of support and healthcare is very important. Because when people feel that they've been heard, when they feel that they've been respected and cared for, their moral outrage will be suited, and their capacity for empathy ultimately will grow, which wasn't the case in this event. But I think here are my final thoughts as we think about this, especially when we think about what this means for flourishing. I think that one is the fact that fair systems promote flourishing. For people to flourish ultimately, I think that they need to trust that their societal systems or the systems around them are fair and just. Of course, this means that healthcare systems, legal systems, and economic structures must work for everyone, not just for privileged few. The second thing that we could also learn from the story is the fact that psychological well-being ultimately depends on human dignity. Now, when dignity is sort of compromised, when human dignity is compromised, psychological well-being suffers. And it suffers because ultimately our psychological need, which is the need for relatedness, is also challenged in the process. And policies ultimately that restore dignity, like having accessible healthcare treatment or having fair treatment plan, are really essential for human flourishing. But the last thing I want to say would be the fact that empathy ultimately heals societal wounds. Cultivating empathy in itself, both in individuals or in the system or in systems, can ultimately help reduce moral outrage, as we've seen, which of course is not the case this time around. But it not only promotes reduce moral outrage, it also helps to promote social cohesion and flourishing. It also helps to promote social cohesion in such a way that we see a community, any flourishing community, as we know, would ultimately be an empathetic community. And so, in the end, I think that flourishing is not just a personal journey, it is a collective one. When we address the injustice that drive people to such extreme emotional response, that drive people to such trauma response, we kind of create a world where dignity, trust, and empathy can flourish. Thank you for joining me today. And if this discussion has somehow resonated with you, please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe to this platform, and share this video to some of your friends who might be helpful, and let's start conversation around this. And hey, I think it's important to keep conversations like this going. And I want to also start by asking you, how do you think we can actually build systems that promote true flourishing for everyone? How do you think that would work? I'd like to hear your thoughts on this. And we'll see you on the next one. And mind you, if you are thinking about the other things that I've talked about, feel free to just watch some of my videos. And I look forward to seeing you on the next one. Bye for now.